Parents of Reddit, what is most fricked up secret you are hiding from your children? I am the child, but my dad waited till I am grown up to tell me that my mom gave me a lot of sleeping pills when I was a little child, so she could leave me alone at home to maintain her relationship with her lover, while my dad was working in another country. That cleared up many things, added. Thanks for everyone wishing me well, I really appreciate that I am doing well, and it doesn't affect me beside that I don't remember much about my childhood, but I didn't suffer or whatever. Meanwhile I am dealing with depression and anxiety since a few years, but I am not sure if this links to the drugging. But meanwhile I am pretty good at being depressed to be honest, haha. Otherwise, is my life really good? I want to clear up that I am in okay terms with my mom, she learned from her mistakes, and I forgave her. I just don't forgive her that she did my dad so dirty. My dad is the greatest person I've ever known, and he deserves to be happy. I'm not the parent, I'm the child, but my family kept it a secret that my brother was a child molester, and that my grandpa had raped my mother and threatened to kill us grandkids. I found out because I told my sister that my brother had molested me, and she told me about the rest. We were raised having a relationship with them like they were normal human beings. It's absolutely disgusting. My daughter knows that her grandparents are getting a divorce. She doesn't know that it's because Grandpa, 72, decided to knock up a 23-year-old. We will talk about it once she's older, but I don't want to normalize that relationship for a pre-adolescent. This is my father-in-law. He's definitely not rich, in fairly impressive shape for a dude pulling Social Security, and I am happily ignorant as to the status of his erections. It's a small-town story with a fucked-up single mom and an old man that hasn't experienced much emotional growth since being drafted for service in Vietnam. These people would never end up together if they were emotionally healthy and didn't have control issues. I am definitely going to do my best to explain to my daughter, but she's 9 and emotionally overwhelmed by the very idea of the divorce. When she comes to me to talk about it, having processed the idea, then I will explain the situation more fully. My husband has already told his dad that our family and his new family won't be getting together for a barbecue anytime in the foreseeable future. A lot of you dudes are assuming a lot about 23. I would remind you that we are talking about small town, single mama, daddy issues, rural deep south, grandpa fucking 23. You all are a bunch of optimists. That she can't have a relationship with her grandfather because he's a pedophile and I would never trust him. The rest of my family maintains a relationship with him and leans on me hard to open up communication, because family comes first. They're absolutely right, my family does come first, which is why my daughter won't ever have to have a relationship with him. He has molested, raped multiple members of my family, and I only found out when I was pregnant with my daughter. Without going into too much detail, he also has a mental illness, and I've been told that I need to let him have a relationship with my daughter, because he's sick and couldn't help it. I never actually took his nose, it stayed on his face the whole time. In fact, it has never once left his face, even though I have told him that I took it countless times. I even showed him the tip of my thumb as evidence of the theft. Sorry you had to read that, but it feels really good to come clean. Thanks for all the responses, awesome. I will tell him the truth eventually, but have to make sure mom is on board too. For those of you condemning me, your words weigh heavy. But honesty, much like a fire at the circus, is intense. My son's older half-sister molested him, and that's why we don't see them anymore. Waiting until we can get into a psych for support before we break it to him. He was 3 when it happened, so was able to tell us, quite graphically, what was happening. The sister also admitted it and said she did it because it was funny, and she liked to hurt him. DCP, Child Protective Services, became involved and investigated both families, but couldn't find anything suspicious. We are telling him because we very strongly believe it is the right thing to do. We don't know how much he remembers, and would much prefer to give him the coping skills now, instead of possibly letting him disintegrate into a non-functioning adult with massive problems. Thank you so much for all the support. It is a horrible thing to deal with, but we are going to do everything in our power to love and support him. I am so sorry that so many of you had to go through similar situations. I am proud of every one of you for surviving and fighting D. My wife and daughter picked me up earlier this afternoon. We opted not to video the moment as it felt impersonal, and we just wanted to truly enjoy each other's company as we soaked in the monumental occasion. I definitely cried more than my daughter did. Over the course of the day, she became more and more excited and exclaimed, "I can't believe you are coming home, it has been a fantastic day." Not really fucked up, but still a big secret. I've been living 5.5 hours away from my wife and daughter for the past 11 months. Every time I talk to my daughter, she asks, "When am I coming home?" Well, little does she know that next Friday, when her and her mom come for what she thinks is just a weekend visit, they're actually coming to pick me up for good. Thanks everyone for all the kind words. To clarify a few things. My move was medically related. I got shot when I was 13, and this is in no way related to that. I am a social worker by trade, but have not worked in the field these past 11 months due to my situation. I actually did an about it a few years ago. My wife and I did get divorced, and yes, we did co-parent. However, recently we have decided that the truth is we should have worked harder on being together and are giving it another go. I call her my wife because I never really stopped thinking of her that way. I mentioned being shot because people were checking my post history and seeing that I had been shot, but not that it was when I was 13. People were wondering if that is why I had been away. I want to thank everyone for the incredible show of support and compassion. For all of the kind words. I would especially like to thank those who shared their personal stories of similar circumstances. Thank you for the gold and everything else. Honestly, I am unable to properly express how your words brightened my day, and will continue to provide encouragement. I promise you all that I will post an update. I'm the child, but my grandma was so mad at my mom dating young and getting pregnant that she lost her first 2 pregnancies because my grandma made her brothers beat my mom until she had miscarriages. It hurts my heart. I know some people were curious for details, so here you goes. My grandma's brother. My mom was an only child. It was communist Albania at the time. My grandma is lovely now, and it's a shame that she was abusive to my mom during her adolescence. My mom, I believe, suffers from some form of bipolar disorder or PTSD and result from the abuse, and subsequently abused my brothers and I. It was like walking on eggshells my whole childhood. Anything I did wrong ended up with me being hit. One of my brothers was the worst to me, would choke me out for making him lag on Call of Duty, and my mom and dad were working all day to support us, and never really intervened, even when they noticed me self-harming and depressed. I got punished and beat because my life in comparison was nothing to complain about. It took me a year in therapy to come to terms with I shouldn't devalue my pain, because my parents have been through worse. After some time, healing, and forgiving, we're all okay with one another. I avoid my brother a bunch still. My anxieties became a little too much for me to handle after living with them for 20 years, so I moved across the country. Despite all the bullshit my family has been through, time really did heal most wounds, and we all do love each other. There's more respect now than there's ever been. My mom has her first at 16, then 18, and me at 21. She understandably feels like she lost most of her childhood being abused and then raising kids. Also, stop telling me to hurt my grandma. I understand my mom's story is painful, but they have a healthy relationship, they love each other. My mom is supporting my grandma financially, and that happened about 30 years ago. My grandma was an amazing guardian to me, and often saved me from my brother's abuse. Kind of the opposite, but on my 18th birthday my father walked into my room with a bag of weed and a bunch of rolling papers, and showed me the entire hidden portion of our house, not on blueprints, access through a hidden door, that he used to grow weed. I had gotten grounded for smoking weed several times by that point in my life. This was in Florida in the 90s. Adoptive parent of 3 kids, 2 of which are biological siblings and cousins. Found out a year after the adoption that the biological parents were half-siblings who shared the same dad. The bio parents found out after they had the first child and proceeded to have another. The kids are now 16 and 13 respectively, and have zero clue that they are a product of incest. Unfortunately, their biological grandpa just passed away, so there very well could be a big reveal coming in the near future. My 3-year-old is an absolute miracle. Her birth mom, my wife's sister, didn't want her, basically tried for an intentional miscarriage via massive drinking and drug use. Born 11 weeks premature, and with 5 different drugs in her system, she shouldn't even be alive by most medical estimations, yet here she is. Slight developmental setbacks, but she is solidly inside the bell curve. Her socialization is on point, and she should start school on time. She will know none of this until she is in her teens, most likely. I am so grateful for this impossible little person. Holy crap, this blew up. Thanks for the gold and silver, kind strangers, all first for me. To clarify, she will most likely know that she is adopted fairly early, as it will inevitably come up. The big fucked up secret will be the dire circumstances of her gestation and, shockingly viable, birth. All she will know is that her biological mother wasn't ready to give her the life she deserved, and we were. Genes don't make your family, love does. She also has an older sibling, way too old to conceivably be mine, so the concept of a loving non-biological parent won't be too far-fetched for her. More details filled in. My wife remembers better than me. I didn't actually meet her until our daughter was 2 years old. We'll also add that my wife's sister, while not involved in our little girl's life at all, has been clean for a long while now, and is doing quite well. My wife and I each have a child from a previous marriage. Both of our ex-spouses were abusive cheaters. Both children still adore and idolize their other parent, and we just keep smiling and nodding. This probably isn't the type of thing Op was asking, but it is a secret that we will maintain for years. Thanks everyone for the replies and commiserative stories. Makes us feel better that we are not the only ones keeping things like this a secret. Pretty sure they know, but my second cousins are technically twins 2 years apart. Their parents did in vitro, and 2 of the eggs were fertilized. They weren't ready for twins, so they froze one of the eggs and had their second kid 2 years later. It's actually pretty cool. I wasn't super familiar with IVF when this happened, and a lot of people are saying they aren't twins. Doesn't really matter to me if they are or aren't. I just thought it was cool when I was a kid. I was about 9 when the oldest was born. For anyone who's wondering, they're a boy and a girl. Not a parent, but my parents held this secret away from me for a long time. When I was 3 to 4, my dad volunteered at a baseball park to shuttle people back and forth on a golf cart. Well, one night he didn't come home till really late, and I went to hide but stopped to see that he looked scared and distraught. He is normally a rough and tough kind of guy and has a big heart. So, I asked him what was wrong, but he said nothing and that he was fine. I believed him and went to bed. I woke up the next morning to see that our cousin, who doubles as our babysitter, was at our house, but neither of my parents were. I asked where they went and she said they went to the morning service of church and not the afternoon service. Again, I believed her and never questioned any of it. Flash forward 10 years, my mom told me what really happened. He was shuttling some guy back to the parking lot when the guy put a knife to my dad's neck. He then proceeded to take my dad behind a dumpster and raped him. So, when he got home, he waited for everyone to go to sleep, and then tried to kill himself by overdosing on painkillers. My mom woke up in the middle of the night, realizing that he wasn't in bed. She found him in the bathroom on the floor motionless and called 911, where was sent to the hospital where was treated. He is thankfully still doing strong. I don't know where I would have been without him. Not a parent but a child. This last Christmas I found out that not only was my mom had already been previously married and divorced, but my dad had a kid before he married my mom. So, I have a half-brother or sister that I have never met. The real kicker was I found it out from my new sister-in-law who had someone did some digging, found out, assumed that I must already know and brought it up out of the blue on Christmas Eve while we were baking cookies. Before I found out I was pregnant with my first child, I took a shit ton of pills. I think it's the closest I've ever come to suicide. I had always dealt with anxiety and depression. I feel like the extra hormones put me over the edge. I found out about a week later that I was pregnant, surprise. I was terrified the entire pregnancy that something would be wrong with him. Luckily, he was completely healthy and is an incredibly smart child. I've never told anyone. I feel so guilty. I was the kid in the scenario. When I was like 12, my dad died of leukemia. He was never around much so I didn't see him often, but that was never the secret. I actually remember the day he took off and left us, woke up one morning, and there was a pile of new toys on the living room floor with a note for mom. Anyway, he started coming around when he received the prognosis. We developed something resembling a positive relationship before he died. When he passed, it absolutely destroyed me. I still remember the funeral. I had to be dragged kicking and screaming out of the car because I didn't want to see it. In his will he left me his car Camaro that I was supposed to get when I turned 16. His parents fought tooth and nail to keep it from me. They were really shitty people, his entire side of the family was, and we eventually just told them to fuck off and keep the damn thing. Fast forward about 15 years. I find out the guy that died was not actually my dad, he was my brother's dad. My real biological dad has been living in the next town over 20 minutes from my house my entire life. My entire family knew about it, except for me. It was when my grandparents fought to keep the car they knew I was not his son. I still don't know if he knew or not, but I assume so. My maternal grandmother has met him several times in my life. My mom said she never thought it was anything worth digging up. Said she intended for me to never find out. I've still never spoken to him. I know a name and an approximation of where he lives, as of about 10 years ago. Beyond that, I know jack about the guy. Grandma said if I ever want to meet him, she would help me contact him. Don't know if I ever will.